Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Serena Musick is a 50 years young homeschool mom of four kiddos living in Virginia. Before coming to a carnivore diet, she endured 35 years of bulimia, chronic undereating, followed by bouts of binging, inflammation, anxiety, and carb addiction, all thanks to her low fat dieting. Since coming over to the animal based and carnivore side, Serena has found food freedom and relief from all of the severe and chronic health issues she had been trying to deal with. Serena is now a carnivore content creator, sharing the message of health and healing online. She also co hosts the Carnivore Revolution page on YouTube and Instagram, so be sure to check that out. Her co host is her dear friend, Jesselyn Randall, who we've hosted on episode 398 of Boundless Body Radio. I was recently honored to be hosted on that amazing YouTube channel on an episode called Casey Ruff, Carnivore, Abstaining, and Exercise. You can connect with Serena on Instagram at serena.carnivore. Serena Musick, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so excited to be on your show. That was a really fun conversation. So I'm looking forward to another fun conversation with you.
Yeah, it was. It was super good. It flowed well. You're just a plethora of information.
I wouldn't go that far. Well, we'll see about that. I do have some questions for you before we get to your health story, but I want to confirm one thing right off the bat. You really did try the cabbage soup diet?
Of course. Doesn't everybody try the cabbage soup diet?
I have not been able to
Of
find
course I
many
tried
people.
it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Oh, I yeah. I enjoyed it at the time, I think. I don't think my body enjoyed it though. Looking back on it, it was not a good idea.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so I was doing a nutrition presentation once about how diets don't work and how our metabolisms work. And I was finding different, like, obscure diets to put on this cover page of my presentation on my PowerPoint. And my favorite one, always was the new cabbage soup diet. So I was always so curious, like, what changed in version 2.0 of the cabbage soup diet? Like, what was lacking in the original cabbage soup diet? Which iteration did you try?
I really have no idea. It was a long time ago that I had first heard about it. So I probably stepped, it must have been the 1.0 version because it was probably 20 years ago, maybe more than that, that I got the first recipe for it. And then I just used that one every time I wanted to like cleanse.
Well, that's why you weren't able to succeed on the original iteration of the cabbage soup diet. A new version came out, far superior, far more cabbage or soup or something. I don't know. So maybe that's why it didn't work.
Definitely should have waited on that one and tried it again when 2.0 came out. My
Should have
loss.
waited. Okay, before we jump back into your fascinating story with all the mini diets you tried, I want to ask you about homeschooling. Before the pandemic, if you would have asked me about homeschooling, I would have said, kind of ridiculous, creates kids that are not socialized, they're not going to sort things out on their own. Now I'm living in a world where middle schools around me have kids that dress up like cats. They literally go number two in the bathroom on the floor to the point that they have to put litter boxes on the floor. I was never a huge fan of public school to begin with, but things like that are happening all around me. And now I'm like, you know what? Homeschooling sounds really awesome. So, point blank, does homeschooling make your kids socially awkward?
It absolutely does not. Now, I might be a little bit biased. We have always homeschooled. We have a daughter that's 22, a son that's 20, and then a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter. And the older two are productive members of society. Our daughter is a full-time real estate agent, so she can actually meet with strangers and talk to them. And our son is a graphic designer for a big local print shop here where we live in Virginia. And so he gets up and he goes to work every day. She lived at home until she got married a month ago. And we're grateful for that. We wouldn't change it. We want them to stay home as long as they can and save money so they can be in a better position than we were when it was time for us to, buy a house and start a family. And so, like I said, they're productive members of society. They hold conversations with adults all day long because I know it seems like, the idea is that we all sit around in our houses in our long skirts, with our long hair. And we're just like, recluses and just hang out amongst ourselves and only with, a certain group of people that we choose to be with. But that's really not what it's like. We live life. They know how to, lay down a laminate floor because they helped their sister do that when she was getting ready to move out. They know how to paint a house now. They used to, our two youngest girls who are 14 and 16 now had a gluten-free baking business that they started when they were 9 and 11. So they had to sit down and find out how much it cost to bake the cookies and how much the ingredients are and how much each cookie costs. So they would know what their profit, was going to be on that. And they sat at their table at the farmer's market every single week for 5 seasons during the farmer's market season in the warmer weather, and had to talk to people every day. They, every time somebody would come up and buy something. We're very active. We have been in basketball and cross country since our oldest two were like 5 and 7. So all the way up, they had to deal with coaches and teammates and other parents, and they had to sell advertising for magazines for our homeschool sports organization. They had to go door to door and sell popcorn at one point so they could make money, to help with fundraising. And they are very, very active, in the things that they do. They talk to people, they sit down and have conversations with adults and look them in the eye. And I don't know many kids that do that these days. Everybody's on there, and our kids have phones. I mean, don't get me wrong, they use phones and stuff, but if an adult's talking to them, they pay attention and they listen. And I just feel like that's not something that you get all the time anymore with kids.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that with kids. Even hard to like make eye contact or say hi to kids. It's
Yeah.
it's a little bit weird. Okay, so what about like
Yeah.
formal things, like let's say like math, for example? Like were they given
Mhm.
complicated math textbooks that were like high school level kind of math? Did they go through that, or were they able to
Sure.
like circumvent that stuff?
Sure. Yeah, the two that have graduated already graduated after finishing advanced mathematics, which includes calculus and things like that. I don't do that. My husband does. They lost me at like, halfway through algebra 1 or algebra 2. I was like, okay, like if I missed a day because we had a sick child, if I missed a couple of days or missed a week and my husband had to, help them, then by the time it was my turn to take over again, I was like, wait, I'm gonna have to go back and read the last, 7 lessons so I can remember how to do this. But he just remembers. So he ends up taking over the math, once it gets a little bit harder. But yeah, they do formal math lessons and formal science lessons. We do actually science and geography and history with a friend. We go to their house about once a week during the school year, and we do the reading and the assignments there, and do little quizzes and things like that at their house for those subjects. But yeah, they can do things like home ec. They can help change the oil in the car, as one of their classes, and all kinds of stuff. We used the farmers market and the baking as a home ec class, which is very cool because then they're getting credit for it and also learning the skill. Our kids can learn to sew. They can, they've taken a lot of that stuff out of the schools. From what I understand, they've taken like the home ec classes, and even in a lot of schools, they've taken out like woodworking. They've taken out mechanics. You can't get those as electives anymore. So if your child goes to school, they're not going to learn some of those things that we have the time to teach our kids because we're home. One of us is always home, with them helping with school. By the time they get to high school, the goal is kind of they can do it themselves with just a little bit of direction or a little bit of help. I mean, that's the goal, right? Is when they go to college, they don't have a teacher helping them throughout everything. And so what happens with homeschooling is they get ready for that process a little bit earlier, because by the time they hit high school, we kind of expect them to be able to sit down, read their lessons, answer the questions. Once it gets to the point where they can read and they can understand stuff, there's no need to have a teacher standing in front of the classroom, spending all of that time teaching them those things when they can kind of do it themselves. So it teaches them to be independent, earlier. And so I think that's a good thing. I think that's good. When they were in elementary school, obviously, I had to do a lot more work, and, I taught them all to read and taught them all to do, all the things. But they say that with homeschooling, for every 2 hours you spend homeschooling, that's equivalent to like 5 hours in a classroom,
I was
because we
just
don't have
thinking
all of
that.
the, yeah, we don't have all of the interruptions, like somebody raising their hand and asking questions, or, the teacher has to leave the room to go get somebody, or has to take a child to the bathroom, when they're, really young. Do they go to the bathroom themselves? Like, does a kindergartner roam the halls by themselves? I don't think so. I think they all get up and they go in a line to the bathroom, I think, and so that takes, 20 minutes probably. I mean, I don't know. Now we're going to get messages. People are going to say, that's not true. That's not how long it takes. I don't know how it really works because my kids have never been to school, but I know is a lot of wasted time. We can eat lunch a lot faster. We don't have to take the breaks to switch classrooms, so there is a lot of, even if you're a proponent of public school, there is a lot of wasted time where the kids have to switch classrooms and stop at their locker. And then when they leave class to go to the bathroom, and when they get in line at lunch. And, the cool thing here is if they need to go to the bathroom, they just go to the bathroom. And, they're doing school while I'm making lunch, and then they come in and they eat and they go right back, to their desks. And so you can really get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time with homeschooling.
That is just not fair. They need to like do a week of my high school the way that I did it, especially on my diet, like eating cold cereal and skim milk in the morning and like the granola bars and like try to stay awake for just a like huge waste of time, like you said. And I think it's so cool. Like if you'd have tried to teach me in high school or college things like aerodynamics or physics or any kind of thing that you want to talk about, I would not have been interested and I wouldn't have been able to understand. Well, now I'm hugely into Formula One car racing, and now I'm voluntarily like spending my time watching videos and learning complicated aerodynamics and traction and
Yeah.
how suspension works. And I do it because I love it. I'm driven to learn, and that's how we are as humans. Like you'll go learn about the things you
Yeah.
care about when you're ready to learn about them. Such a better way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it's really, and there people will disagree with this, but in my opinion, just my opinion, I feel like it's silly to push them into deciding what they want to do in 11th or 12th grade. I mean, you're asking a 16 or 17-year-old boy or girl to make a decision that's going to last them 50 or 60 years. And I just think that's not when that should be done. So our kids do what we call a second senior year. Some people call it a two-time senior, where they actually stay home and do high school for an extra year. So I actually have a senior this year and a sophomore. And the senior will also be a senior again next year, as long as she doesn't officially graduate. She can go ahead and do another senior year. And most of the kids do that. And I prefer that because that gives them that extra year to decide. And then they can go to the community college for a year or two and maybe not have to make that decision until they're 20 or 21, even, as long as they are productive members of society, as long as they are working, as long as they are going to school and learning things. I kind of feel like, for us anyway, it's better to let them take their time to make that decision. It's something like 60 or 70% of people that went to college don't do the job that their degree is for. And I just think that's kind of sad, right? I mean, like, if you hadn't been pushed into that decision, maybe you would have realized how much you liked aerodynamics, and things like that before you had to make that decision and choose your major in college. And so I like the idea of them being able to take their time and make that decision before being kind of pushed into it. And we also want our kids to stay home for as long as possible and save money. And, so I know that we're a little bit different. I know people that push their kids out to college, a year early because they could, because, and now the other thing the kids are doing, I don't know if it's like this where you are, but a lot of the kids are in high school taking classes that give them college credits. So when they graduate high school, they graduate with a 2-year college degree already. And I'm like, great. So now you have somebody who's going to go off to college at 17 or 18, already has a 2-year degree, and they're going to spend 2 years, at a university or something. And then they're going to be, they're going to be 20, when they get that other degree. And then what? Then they're 20 and maybe have a degree in something that they don't want to do, but they didn't know that when they started. And I just feel like it gets very complicated and confusing for the kids. And a 20-year-old boy is still kind of a kid, so to have to make that decision and then be set up with a 4-year degree when you turn 20 and have to start a job or a career that's supposed to be for the rest of your life. I don't know. I know there'll be a lot of people that disagree with that, but I wish my parents had done that for me. I
Yeah.
wish somebody had told me to take my time instead of rushing into a full-time job at 18. I wish somebody had given me that advice, like stay home as long as you can, save your money, like I wish somebody had done that for me. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying to do for our kids what I didn't have. So maybe we can set them up, for a productive future.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so very much for letting me ask those questions about it. I'm always so curious about
Yeah.
it. I think it's a wonderful system that you guys have set up, and it's great to hear that the kids are thriving. That's fantastic. Part of
Thank you.
raising healthy kids is raising them on the right foods. That was not an opportunity that I got. It doesn't sound like there's an opportunity that you got. Can you talk us through your incredible story of health and all the things you had to go through before, as we mentioned in the introduction, that you finally found like a low carbohydrate type diet?
Yeah. So it started for me when I was 12. That's when I bought my first box of diet pills. That was when I first realized that I needed to lose weight, which of course I did not need to do at 12 years old. And my sister was anorexic and bulimic. Even then, she's 7 years older than me. At that point, she'd already been hospitalized several times. So that was already kind of in my head. My dad was a drug addict. My mom was an alcoholic. They were divorced. And I was basically an only child at that point. Even at 12 years old, my brother and my sister had both already moved out when I was 12 years old. And so I was basically an only child with an alcoholic mother. They were separated and then divorced. So I was just living with her. And I just knew all the stuff that my sister had been doing and all the things my sister had said. And so I thought I was supposed to be on a diet. And so that's what I did. And then it just evolved into this young adult who heard, I mean, I knew my sister was bulimic, but I didn't know anybody else who was bulimic. And I, heard from friends how awesome it is because you can eat whatever you want. And so I started doing that, like I was impressionable. I said, this is why I don't want my kids to go off to college when they're young, because I was very impressionable at, 18 years old. And it was somebody that I knew and respected who told me how great it was, and I believed it. And so that led me down a path of about 37 years of different various eating disorders. I was actually jealous of anorexics at one point because they were stronger than I was, because I was eating the food and not keeping it down. They were strong enough to not eat it. I mean, that's how messed up it was for me. Was um, I just thought about it all wrong. It was all backwards. And so that, like I said, led me down this road of 37 years of binging. Even once the purging stopped, I still felt like I had to punish myself because I was still binging. And so I would eat all the things and then I would starve myself for, 3 or 4 days. And it wasn't fasting because it wasn't like that. I think mentality has a lot to do with fasting too. So just not eating for 3 days isn't, you're still taking bites here and there, even though you're punishing yourself and you're not going to eat because you're weak. And that's, I mean, honestly, sorry for people who are going through this at the moment, but you are being weak and you are letting it control you instead of you controlling it. And so that's where I was it was controlling me. And I would take little bites here and there. And I would usually lose whatever I gained from my last binge. And there were times where it would get ahead of me and I would gain 5 pounds and then I'd have to figure out how to get that 5 pounds off. But it was just this cycle for me for about 37 years. And when I started Carnivore, I had actually been doing Weight Watchers. I had lost some weight. I don't recommend Weight Watchers. I was under eating all of the time. When I go back and look at the things that I was eating, the processed foods, the sugar-free foods, the just the amount of things that I wouldn't even consider food now. Yeah, I don't recommend that. They encourage all of those processed foods. You figure out the points on them. And but in any case, I was doing Weight Watchers and I had stopped losing weight because I was under eating. And I know that this is a problem that I have, over the years with under eating, but it's so hard for me to get past that. But then I woke up one day with this distorted taste and smell from having had COVID 3 months before. It's called parosmia. And it makes many, many things taste and smell not like what they are. For me, in my case, it was like a rotten skunk carcass somebody had lit on fire, is how I described it that day. The smell of the coffee my husband was making just about knocked me over. It smelled so bad. And it got worse for about a week. All these different foods, it just kept getting worse. So after about 2 months, what I had found in that 2 month period were many Facebook groups for support, lots of people on different ends of the spectrum, some of whom were on feeding tubes because they couldn't keep anything down because of the taste and smell, and others who had gained 100 pounds in 6 months from it because all they could eat was sugar and sweets. I know. Like if you go to those Facebook groups, people are desperate to find out what works. And it's different for everybody, but several things are the same, like coffee across the board. Everybody has a problem with coffee. Things like peanut butter, garlic, onion, popcorn, like certain things just smell bad to everybody. For a while, it was meat for me. Like I had a really hard time. I couldn't eat a lot of protein. So I was basically living on my girls' gluten-free baked goods, whatever was left over from the farmer's market. So cupcakes, fresh strawberry cake, like you name it. That's what I was eating after the farmer's market. And I would eat that for the week and I was gaining weight. On my birthday that year, so it was my 48th birthday in May. So it was like almost exactly a year ago. I woke up on a Monday morning after having a binge eating weekend of cupcakes because they made me the cupcakes that I asked for and I ate 20 of them in about 36 hours. And I woke up Monday morning and said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I got to figure something out. And at that point, the only meat I could eat was a hamburger fresh off the grill and a steak fresh off the grill. I couldn't even refrigerate them and then reheat them because of the smell. And so I knew I had to give up the sugar, and I already couldn't eat fruits and vegetables because they tasted and smelled rotten also. And so I was living on hamburgers and steak. And that's when I started doing research. Like, can I live like this? Like, what's going to happen to me if I continue to eat like this? And that's how I found many people in the carnivore space. And of course, the Joe Rogan podcast, which is how almost everybody finds carnivore. And I just started like absorbing myself in all of the podcasts and the YouTube videos and just all the stuff, reading about it and learning about it. And it was about 6 months in when I had the light bulb moment where I heard somebody talking about the difference between an abstainer and a moderator. And I realized the reason I was feeling so much better. Now I was gaining weight because I wasn't eating enough, because that's a hard habit to break too. But I remember hearing about that and just thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not broken. Like I thought I was this like broken person because of my eating disorders and stuff. It is a thing. And I'm an abstainer. Like, which I think, knowledge is power. Once you know that, like that can put you on the path. But for the first 6 months, I stuck with it. I didn't cheat because I knew I wasn't craving the sweets anymore. And I knew that the alternative was gaining all the weight that I had already started to gain. And I had seen these people's, the people losing weight and the people gaining weight from this issue that I had. And so I knew I had to do something. And so I just kind of stuck with it for 6 months. And once I had that light bulb moment, I was like, I'm never going back. There's a reason this is working for me, and I'm never going back. And then I lost 35 pounds. And I've gained a few back. I think just being too liberal with cheese, and even if I'm still eating the same foods, if I kind of let go that I'm trying to lose weight mentality, you can tend to gain a few pounds. But the thing is, I don't worry about it anymore. My clothes still fit. The number on the scale is the number on the scale, but I'm not obsessed with it like I used to be. It definitely, the carnivore diet saved me.
That is really remarkable. So, okay, it sounds terrible. I've heard you describe it on other podcasts. It really sounds terrible. I really meant to go and watch the scene from Anchorman, where Paul Rudd's character opens up his Black Panther cologne and he sprays it, and everybody in the office has these like hilarious comments of how disgusting this thing smells. Like it smells like used diaper filled with Indian food or whatever. Wanted to throw a few of those out there for you. I forgot to do it, but anyway, can we go back and revisit that? How terrible is that really? It sounds absolutely awful. And I think in COVID, we've heard a lot that people were losing their sense of smell, and that alone sounded bad enough. People were saying like losing your sense of, you have no idea how much taste is affected by smell. This is
Yes.
a lot different. Can you explain like really truly how terrible this was?
Yeah, and I still have it to a certain extent. Like for Memorial Day, because we couldn't grill out because of the weather here, my mother-in-law asked me to make a beef roast, and so I put a beef roast in the instant pot and just didn't really think about it, even though I know long cooked meats are hard for me, even still. And as soon as I walked back in the house when that beef roast was done, I was like, there is no way I can eat that, and I had to bring myself a steak, to eat separately from. And as soon as you open it, like so last night we were at a volleyball game for our girls, and I'm sitting up at the top of the bleachers with some friends and my husband, and I was like, "What is that horrible smell?" And my husband's like, "I don't know." And then I looked down, the girl right in front of us just came back from a Greek restaurant, and she's got, is it gyro or gyro? How do you say that?
Euro, I
You know what
think,
I mean,
something like
right?
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
gyro. Yeah, yeah. And she's got one of those. I was like, oh my goodness. And so I got some essential oils out of my purse and started rubbing under my nose. I have like a little silver, this is how bad it is. I have this little, not silver, but silicone nose ring I can put on. You can barely see it if I'm wearing it, but it stays right here, and you can put some essential oils on it. So you're smelling that instead of whatever else is around you. But it's that bad that I went looking for something that could get me through the day. It's like when somebody opens the container, like the urge to vomit is immediate from the smell. Kind of like if you just picture what a rotten skunk carcass lit on fire would smell like. I mean, that was exactly what it smelled like to me. And still, when I smell a skunk, it doesn't smell like a skunk, but other things smell like skunk. And so I will say to people, what is that? Is that a skunk? Because I don't know. So I'm 50 years old and I don't know what a skunk smells like. And I can't go near a cup of coffee because it smells like a skunk. But I don't know the smell of a skunk when I smell it. It's the weirdest thing. And sometimes I have phantom smells also, which is called something different. It's called phantosmia, which is actually a different condition. So I get I get to be the lucky individual, or one of the lucky individuals that has both. Sometimes I smell cigarette smoke. Sometimes I smell regular smoke, almost like a campfire. And sometimes I smell gasoline, which is very distressing because we'll be sitting on the couch watching a movie and I'll be like, does anybody else smell gas? And I'll say, no. I'm like, okay. Like, because I just have these weird smells. If something is burning in the kitchen, sometimes I don't smell it until the smoke alarm goes off. Even still, I mean, this still happens today. So it's hard. It really is almost like having a disability, not being able to discern what the smells are. And it just stinks. Literally, it stinks. But it's hard. It's hard because we'll go to parties where I know that even if they have meat there, I probably won't be able to eat it, depending on what it is. I mean, obviously, if it's a steak or a hamburger, I can. But you just don't think about stuff like that. Even now, it's been more than 2 years that it's been this way for me, 2 years and 3 months now. And that it's been like this. I also had the loss of taste and smell for the first 3 months, and then it came back like this. But it's been a long time, but it still catches me off guard. Like when I said I would make the beef roast that day, it didn't occur to me that I wouldn't be able to eat it until I put it in the Instant Pot and it started cooking, and I smelled it and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to eat that beef roast. But here's the other really weird thing is I have one of those black pearls, the clay pot that Jess and I both have to cook in, where it's made out of clay. I can cook a beef roast on there and I can eat it and it tastes delicious. So I don't know if it's a combination of, I don't know if it's the pressure cooking or the fact that the pressure cooker makes it slow cook, but faster. I don't know what causes it, but there are other instances where the same kind of thing happens. Like if I cook it like this, I can't eat it, but if I cook it like this, I can. But there have been multiple days where I have come home from somewhere or picked up food for the kids or something and come home and ended up laying on my back on the couch or in bed with like a diffuser on my chest. So I'm smelling something else and I'm so sick that I can't do anything for the rest of the day. I mean, it's been, last night was bad. Like I was very surprised by the smell of that food last night because it's not that bad all the time. But we do volleyball and basketball with our kids, and the concession stands always have chili for hot dogs and things like that. And that's hard because I'm in the gym with that concession stand for the whole evening smelling that chili. And that's actually when I bought the little nose rings, was for that purpose, so that I can sit up in the bleachers and not smell that. So it's debilitating. And in some cases, there have been times where I've had to come home and just go to bed because I was so nauseous from the smell of something.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that sounds debilitating. It does sound like a disability
Yeah.
in some sense. And it's so outside of your control. You smell what you smell. I could be sitting next to you with whatever food that I have. You have no control about that. How helpful were the Facebook Facebook pages with the support groups? That must have been hugely beneficial.
It was at first, except when you see other people get better, that starts to hurt after a while because other people are getting better and you're not. And I bought multiple supplements at the time. I bought multiple things. I even bought this red light therapy thing that you put up your nose, these two little prongs that go up your nose and light up your nose like Rudolph, to try to make it better because red light therapy was supposed to help. I mean, I did all the things. And then when I started Carnivore, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to keep trying stuff because at that point, while I was going through it before I started Carnivore, I was crying every day. I mean, every day I would cry. And about 6 months ago, somebody had made a cup of coffee and it smelled like coffee to me. And so I made one, poured the cream in it, got it all ready and took a sip. It was horrible. And so then I had tears in my eyes and trying to give away my cup of coffee. And everybody's like, what? I thought it smelled good. It's like this roller coaster all the time. But in any case, back then I had tried all the supplements everybody recommended, alpha lipoic acid. Somebody had mentioned there was like some sort of like asparagus water people were trying. There was all this stuff people were trying. And I tried many, many things. And then I was just sad because it worked for them and it didn't work for me. Was it just their time to get better? Because they say it's neurological and it just takes time. But we're going on like 29 months total for me with this almost. And that's hard. So I've only actually smelled like a cup of coffee that smelled like a cup of coffee a handful of times. You could count it on one hand, probably, one of which was after a 5-day water fast. I came downstairs and made a cup of coffee and it smelled like a cup of coffee and it tasted like a cup of coffee. And that was before I started Carnivore. I went around the kitchen and I started tasting everything. Everything tasted normal. And within 48 hours of eating again, it went away and went back to the way it was. So I don't know if mine is ever going to get better. It's not nearly as bad as it was. So I'm thankful for that. But I wish it would just go away. I mean, it's still hard for me. I mean, I've had times where we've been to people's houses for dinner and I just can't eat what they have, and most of my friends are, aware of it and they know. But even if they put just a little bit of garlic and onion on it, it's not a carnivore thing that I can't eat it. It's just that I can't eat it because of the garlic and onion. And so people have a hard time understanding,
Yeah.
how that works. And I don't
Yeah.
understand it either. So
Yeah, rightfully so. I was just going to say, like, of course, we're all trying to understand it. It would be, forgivable
yeah,
that they wouldn't know how it works and how to help you
yeah,
with that. It's just such an interesting
right.
way to get into carnivore. How did you, what made you think that burger patties or a steak cooked fresh would be your ticket out of it?
Well, it was just that that was how my experience had gone for the last couple of months. When we would make hamburgers, I could eat it. But the next day I would go to get one out of the refrigerator and I couldn't, the smell would just like, I'd have to make something fresh because the smell was so bad when it was cold. And then even when it was reheated. And then it got to the point where it still smells bad when it's cold. So I can't eat cold meat. Like I see people walking around with their cold steaks, eating them out of a baggie, while they're walking around theme parks and stuff. I can't do that. I still can't eat cold meat. A can of tuna fish will send me to bed for the rest of the day, or one of those little pouches of tuna fish, because it smells so bad to me. When somebody opens up one of those in my house, I'm just like, oh my gosh, it just smells so bad. I still can't eat salmon either. There were a couple of other fish that I can't eat. So it was just trial and error. Like, at that point I was still eating normally. So we would make burgers for dinner and I would have one, I just went by smell when I started carnivore. And I was just like, okay, well, these are two things that I know I can eat that aren't the fruits and vegetables that I kept trying that tasted and smelled rotten. And without having to go through too much trouble, those were the two things that I knew that I could eat just over the last, the 2 months before that, just kind of figuring it out.
Hmm. Did you have any resistance to your initial sessions learning about carnivore? Like, was there anything to the fact that, like, if carnivore was helpful and safe and effective and it was working for a lot of people with a lot of different things, did that give you any kind of resistance having gone through so many other diets in the past?
It did, but at the same time, I was already doing it when I found out about it. So I think that made quite a difference that I was already doing it. It's not like I was looking for some diet to do and started doing research. I started doing it like that morning. And because that was all I could eat, I wasn't going to eat sugar anymore and I couldn't eat fruits and vegetables. So that left me meat. And so I was already going to do it. And then I started doing research and I just kept thinking, surely my sense of taste and smell is going to get better in the next, little while. So I'm not going to have to do this for very long. And then I started doing research and seeing all the things and all the people. And I was like, maybe I am going to do this for a while.
Wow, so interesting. So, how about now? Like, what kinds of food do you include in your diet now that are safe? Has that opened up at all?
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better because, like, at first, there was one day where somebody in the house was making eggs, and I actually had to go out to our camper for a little while. My husband found me out in the camper crying about 30 minutes later because I couldn't even be in my own house because somebody wanted to have eggs. So it's opened up a lot now. I can eat eggs. For it took me about 6 or 8 months to be able to eat chicken, and I still have a little bit of a hard time. A rotisserie chicken is one of my favorite things, and I treat myself every now and then when we go to Sam's. I'll grab one. And eat it with my fingers in the car like everybody else does. And the smell and taste of that still bothers me just a little bit. So there are certain things that still bother me a little bit, but I can get by. I don't use a lot of spices anyway. So, the carnivores don't usually use a lot of spices. So it doesn't usually bother me in my daily life now because I have learned which things I mostly need to stay away from, except, every now and then, like with the beef roast, I kind of forget and I make the beef roast and then I open the Instant Pot and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to eat this, so it just kind of depends.
Yeah. Okay. So, anecdotally, you could say that a carnivore diet has helped you with the condition. Let me make sure I get this right. Parosmia?
Parosmia.
Parosmia. Okay, I was close. Can you
Yeah.
say that a carnivore
Yeah.
diet did help you specifically with that condition?
I think it did. There's no way to know for sure. They say it's neurological, and I know that carnivore can really help, help your brain, to help your brain clear up. And so I'd like to say that it helps a little bit, but there's obviously no way to know because we don't know where I would be today if I wasn't doing that. But it did start getting better fairly quickly. I feel like there was more improvement in the first 3 months of being carnivore than there were in the first 3 months of having this condition and eating normally. So I do think so, but sometimes people just wake up in the morning and it's gone. Like they just wake up in the morning and suddenly everything smells normally, and I'm just like, one day that's going to happen for me, I hope. But like I said, because of my food choices, because of the way I'm living now, it doesn't bother me like it used to, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful for the carnivore diet for that.
That's great. What other things are you grateful for the carnivore diet for? I just seem to notice that, especially when people make the jump from like keto, low carb to carnivore, they get this like laundry list of all these wonderful things that change that they were not expecting on a carnivore diet. And it's pretty cool.
Mhm.
So, what things also changed as you were changing your eating for this condition?
Definitely, I mentioned it a minute ago, but definitely my brain, the brain fog that lifted, and the, when you start something like this and you stick with it, you feel encouraged and empowered every day that you make it through when you're doing something, that's hard. And so that for sure, like my brain is just different than it was before. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I would not be sitting here with you today. I did not have the confidence that I have right now. And that is huge for me. So then the eating disorders, and along with that, I'm not obsessed with my weight anymore. I mean, I care, don't get me wrong. I don't want to gain weight. But I do feel like I built some muscle, and then I ate too much cheese, and that's why I gained the few pounds that I've gained. And you just think, when people are stressed out about that last 3 pounds or the 3 pounds I gained, nobody else is going to notice that 3 pounds. I mean, I know you noticed it, but nobody else is going to notice that. So I've learned to kind of calm down about those things. I was 48 when I started, almost 48. And so I had the normal 48-year-old aches and pains. I would get out of bed and I would sit on the end of the bed for a minute and stretch. Like it was harder for me to get up. Now I just hop right out of bed. And I think that's a big one too, because so many of the things that people think are just part of getting older are not. It is because we are not taking care of ourselves, even when we think we are. And a 48-year-old, in my opinion, should not have aches and pains like that. So now I'm 50. I have zero aches and pains at all. I didn't have like a lot of chronic health conditions. Like I didn't have IBS and things like that. I did have dry skin, which has gone away. Most of my stuff was up here though, honestly. And that's huge. Like the fact that I can say I'm not worried about the 3 or 4 or 5 pounds I've gained, like that is huge. To me in the past, that would have been a showstopper. That would have been a very, very big deal for me. And I know so many people, women especially, have such a hard time with their weight. And for me, carnivore was the fix for me mentally and physically, as far as my weight goes. And my brain, carnivore just, gosh, I wish there was a word for it. It's like this carnivore zen. It's like
Yeah.
carnivore zen.
Yeah.
Like I just don't worry about the things I used to worry about. I feel good almost all the time. I mean, sure, we all have days where we wake up and just feel like, ugh, I don't really want to do today, but even after a big workout, I'm not really sore the next day. There are just so many things that carnivore can help with, and so many things that I've seen it help other people with, that I am convinced without a doubt this is how we should eat. I mean, that's how I feel. I think it's just amazing. And I think if nothing else, the brain power that I got back because of it, little things like when you're trying to log into an app and it says, we're going to send you a text message with a 6-digit code. And you have to you open up the text message and they're like, oh, how am I going to remember that? You try to go back, on your phone to get it. Like I used to panic when that would happen. And I'm like, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like you just remember them. Like, the brain fog, people don't give that enough empowerment, like being able to look at a number and remember it for a while, or those are the things that you don't think are really important until you don't have them anymore. And I used to get like stressed out when those numbers would come up, and it seems silly now, but I used to get stressed out. Those numbers would come up and I would know I have to flip over, remember those numbers, but on a piece of paper, and I couldn't do it most of the time. Like I would have to go back into it, and I don't have to do that anymore. So, that's a little thing, but also a big thing.
I agree. I think that's such a great example. I've been in the habit of telling people this is the only diet that you'll come to for weight loss. And within a few weeks, you won't even care about weight loss. So you'll be feeling so good that will be on the back burner for you. And
Yeah.
that was a perfect segue, actually, because when you first started, you actually had a pretty awkward period of time where you were gaining quite a bit of weight. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was eating every other day. I was fasting a lot. I was fasting like rolling 48-hour fast, they call it. So I was eating like one meal every 2 days, and it would be like 2 hamburger patties with some cheese or some butter on them, and that was it. And because of so many years of under eating and not eating properly, my hunger cues were all messed up, and so I didn't realize how much I was in fact under eating, and it caused me to gain 18 pounds over a period of 8 months. And I was stressed out and I was crying a lot, but I felt so good that I kept doing it anyway. So that's like you said, like I did care about the weight. It wasn't that I didn't care about it, but I felt good enough that I was willing to let it go while my body healed itself.
That's great. So, what advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out with the diet?
I would say stick with it because it's hard. I know it is. Take it one day at a time. You start out today, you wake up today, whatever day you're watching this. If you need to wake up tomorrow and do it, fine. But you wake up and you say, okay, I'm going to get through breakfast, and breakfast is going to be just carnivore foods. And then around lunchtime, you say, okay, I'm going to get through lunch. And you do that and you get through dinner, and you take it one day at a time, one meal at a time. And at the end of the day, you're going to be empowered and encouraged, and you're going to be proud of yourself that you stuck with it, And then you get up the next day and you do it again. Don't look at it like, how could I do this for the rest of my life? Or how could I do this for 30 days? I think you should do it for 30 days as a bare minimum if you're going to try it. But don't go into every day thinking that. Wake up in the morning and say, today is the day I have to focus on and get it done today. And then don't worry about tomorrow until tomorrow comes. I think that's huge.
Yeah, that's great. I tell people all the time, like, it's one meal. You can do one meal of steak and eggs and see how you feel. Like, that's not all that torturous. It sounds like you're kind of a fan of the concept of like priming, something we talked to Raymond Nazan about. And during a transition over to a carnivore diet, we all kind of have this tendency of like, fasting is good, so let's do it a lot. Calorie restriction is good, so let's do it a lot. So we're not eating enough. And he recommends eating 3 meals a day for like a week or two, to the point you will naturally not want to eat 3 meals a day anymore because you'd be so stuffed all the time. Is that kind of what you recommend as well? How you think about it?
Well, I do recommend the 3 meals a day, but not eating until you're like stuffed, because for me, that is just that cycle of binging, and then punishing myself by fasting. It just reminds me too much of that. And so I had a hard time with that. I tried the priming thing. And I had a hard time with it. It felt wrong to me. It felt like an eating disorder. It felt like I was binging. And so I have to be a little bit careful. So I usually recommend to people 3 meals a day, not to track calories in the beginning, except that at the end of the 30 days, if you haven't noticed a difference yet and you don't feel a lot better, then it's time to track so you can tweak. Track it so you
Yeah.
can tweak it, see how much you're eating, because chances are women especially probably aren't eating enough. Even with the priming, it's so hard to make ourselves eat.
Yeah. What are some good signs that somebody would need to start tracking food? Because you hear so often, I'm just as guilty of this as well, of people out there saying if you're on a carnivore diet, you don't really need to track anything. That may or may not be true. And tracking definitely has pros and cons. What would be a good sign
Mhm.
for somebody who's on a carnivore diet to start tracking their food? What things could they notice that might be beneficial for them?
Yeah, so I think being a little bit tired is one of them, because you're nourishing, and that's like after the first 2 weeks. Because during the first 2 weeks, you're going to be tired because you're withdrawing from carbs anyway, most of the time. But after that period, if you're still feeling tired, or you're just not feeling like this endless energy you hear other people talk about, I say you give it 30 days of 3 meals a day. Don't fast. And if you're not losing weight at the end of that 30 days, you have to give it that time for your body to heal. If you're not losing weight or you're gaining weight, I think that's when it's time to start tracking, because after 30 days, you should be able to, your clothes should be looser. Even if you're not actually losing weight, you should be, your body should be reorganizing itself, and so you should see a difference, even if it's not on the scale. And if you don't, then it's time to track and just kind of see what's going on. And most of the time, women are under eating, men too.
Yeah, I see that a lot too. Definitely in both genders as well. I think women get more
Mhm.
like, attention for that, but it also happens with men as well. Tell us a little bit more about
Yeah.
your experience about learning about abstaining and moderating. That was definitely something that really helped me as well. I always have loved the idea of moderation. I've preached moderation. I still to this day love the idea and know that I can't do it. I just cannot do it when it comes to sugar. Tell us about how that learning really changed your life.
Yeah, it was just realizing that that I don't really know how to explain it. Like, I'm not alone. Like, understanding that this is a classified thing. This is a real thing. Some people can't just have one Oreo. I've never had one Oreo cookie. Like, when I used to buy, I've been gluten free for years, and so when I used to buy gluten free Oreos for the kids, I bought 2 packs because I knew I was going to kind of hide and eat one. Like, I would walk through the kitchen and take as many as my fingers would hold, and go sit down somewhere and eat them, and then everybody else was still eating, one at a time. And I would get up and I would go back and I would get another handful, and eat them. Um, it's just knowing, though, that all of those times that I sat down and did that, that it's because I'm not a moderator, if that makes sense. Like, there's a reason for it. There's a classification. I'm kind of one of the things I've really learned about myself with the carnivore diet is that things have to be um, like put in boxes for me. Like, things have to be like, for instance, there are many different groups that use different ways to communicate with each other, like Discord, for instance, and Telegram. And what I don't like is, like, I like the way Facebook works. Like, somebody posts about something, you can comment on it if you want to, and that's where all of the information is about that thread. And then you go to the next one and you can comment on that if you want, and all of those comments are right here. Like, I have just found that things have to be compartmentalized for me. And so that, I think, is the same kind of thing. Like, once I knew the difference between, like, this is an abstainer, this is a moderator, you're either one or the other. I think that really helped me to kind of understand it and not feel so bad about myself and beat myself up for all of those years. I just had to let it go at that point and know that there's a reason that I'm like this. And it's because I'm an abstainer. And all I have to do to fix it is abstain. And that actually turns out is really easy.
That was really well explained. I really like thinking about it in that concept. I'm actually part of Dr. Chafee's book club, which I absolutely love. It's really, really fun. They have a Discord page, and yeah, you're on there. That's right. Yeah, and I see
Yeah.
notifications that you've like tagged me in something, or Olivia's tagged me in something. I like searching everywhere. Like, where do I go? I can't even see the post.
I
That's
know it's
funny.
really hard for me. So I end up not really being involved in the conversations there because I can't find it. Like I don't want to see everything. I only want to see the things that I'm interested in. So a style like Facebook works for me. Where there's the post and then there's the comments on it. And then there's another post and there's the comments on that one. And if I want to comment on one, I know where it goes. Like I just have such a hard time with that. It's the compartmentalization for me that helps me sort through things, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. Even Twitter, like it's really hard to find the original thread when somebody comments on something.
Yeah.
It's just hard to find. That's hilarious. So, as you were
Yeah.
changing your diet, what was going on with the rest of the family? Were they interested? Did they also change their diets? Were you making different foods? Like, what kind of impact did that have on them? You're shaking your head.
Well, yeah. My story is a little bit different because of my smell and taste issues. So I had already stopped kind of making meals for everybody by the time I became a carnivore because it was hard for me. I mean, I would try to make things, but I couldn't season things and then taste them. Like if you're making, you never realize how much that means unless you're making like taco meat or chili or spaghetti sauce. If you can't taste it and see what it needs. And so that became hard before I became a carnivore. But nobody was really interested. It actually took a long time before anybody really noticed. I just started making more meat and they were eating that. And I was making like a side to go with it. And nobody was really interested. And then my husband and I sat down and had to talk about it. It had been a while, it had been months and he was like, wait a minute, you're not eating any of that stuff. And I was like, no, that's how crazy our life is. We're just busy. And nobody even noticed that I only had the meat on my plate. And so everybody was a little bit surprised. They started thinking I'm a little bit nuts. My husband is mostly carnivore now. There are days where he's not, and that's fine. If he can do that, if he's, not an abstainer, then that's fine. Our kids are not, none of them are. I would much rather they eat fruits and vegetables than goldfish, of course. And so they do eat some fruits and vegetables, and they eat all of the meat, that we eat. And then they also a lot of times have sides or something to go with it. And then our oldest daughter, she moved out, so she's not eating with us anymore. And our son is 20. He's gone a lot. He very rarely is here, like for a family meal, unless it's like a special occasion. And in that case, they're going to eat what I make. And so, if it's like we're having dinner here on Sunday after church or whatever, and I'll make carnivore pizza with sausage crust or something like that. And everybody just eats that because they like it anyway. So when we're doing a meal like that, I just try to make something that I know everybody likes.
Nice. So that does sound like everybody has moved a little bit more towards animal based, even if they're not fully like carnivore.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe a little.
Okay, nice. So tell us a little bit about the evolution of you sharing this message because you were already promoting certain things in the health world, I believe, before you found the carnivore diet. Is that true?
Yes. So I was an avid juicer. Is that what you're referring to? Are you
I
talking about
think,
my juicing, aren't you?
well, yeah,
Yes.
I guilty too.
Yeah, I was an avid juicer. And so I was doing all of these videos about juicing, and I would come from the grocery store and cover my counters with, fruits and vegetables, like $500 worth of fruits and vegetables that I planned on juicing. And then I would juice fast for 14 days. And I started sharing about that. I have a Facebook group that has like 15,000 members in it. I thought juicing was a good idea at the time. And I did feel good then. I feel a lot better now. I felt good compared to average then, and I feel a lot better now, and I wouldn't trade it. And that page is still there. Maybe it's still helping people. I don't know. I haven't been on it in a really long time, but there's still people in it. And so yeah, I used to promote juicing a lot, and I think that I would still say juicing is better than the sad diet. I don't really know though at this point, but as long as it's not all processed stuff, it would have to be better, I guess.
Yeah, gotcha. But that experience of creating all that content gave you the experience and the confidence to start promoting carnivore. So when did you decide that that was going to be your main message and you wanted to get that out into the world rather than just let it, help you and potentially your family?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. I just was doing it, and I knew that if I had not seen other people like you and Kelly Hogan and Bella and Sean Baker and Dr. Chafee, I knew that if I had not seen those people, I would not be where I was, and I would not have had the healing that I had had. And so I thought, well, the more people that shout it from the rooftops, the more people are going to hear it. So I just started talking about it. It wasn't really like a conscious effort, decision necessarily. I just decided one day that I was going to share this meal, and one meal leads to two meals, and two meals leads to a reel, which leads to a YouTube video. You know what I mean? It just kind of, I mean, because you did it, you just realize that maybe you can help somebody, and maybe I can.
We mentioned Jesselyn in the introduction. How did the two of you hook up?
She was doing a series on her Instagram page called Beyond the Meats. And it was just like talking to carnivores about things besides being a carnivore. So there was an introduction. You would talk about carnivore just for a minute, and then it would be about other things. And I loved it. And she asked me, I was one of her, like in the first few 5 or 6 guests that she had on there. And when it was over, we talked for a little while in Messenger about how much fun it was. And we were like, let's do something else together. And we decided on a YouTube channel, a cooking YouTube channel. And a couple of days later came up with the name. And like the next day, my son made the logo for us. And here we are.
Very cool. Carnivore Revolution. I love
Yeah.
it. What are you guys promoting? What style of things are you let me rephrase the question. What direction have you wanted to take Carnivore Revolution in? Who are you trying to teach about the carnivore diet? Like, who are you appealing to?
Um, Anybody who will listen, honestly, because I think that's what it's going to take to change things. Is anybody who will listen needs to hear anybody who will talk about it, is what I think. And so, we started off with lots of cooking, and then now we have transformed into more shorts and some interviews and things like that. So we don't know exactly where this is going. We're just going to keep telling people about it and hoping people keep listening, because I think, like I said, the more we talk about it, the more people are going to hear it. And I think it's a message that needs to be told. It's a message that needs to be learned by your average individual who is, eating fast food 3 times a day and coming home and sitting down with a bag of potato chips before bed. I think these people need to know what we're doing. They need to know what we're saying, and they need to do it too.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Let me see. How do I phrase this? I am bobbling everything today. Does Carnivore Revolution generate any income, or are you just putting this out for free?
It does not generate a lot of income. We do have some ads on some of our videos, but it does not generate a lot of income. People see people on YouTube and they see, if there are videos that have a lot of views, you just assume people are making a ton of money from that, but that's not always true. And it's not very much per click. So most people are not doing as well as you think they are from YouTube. That's for sure.
Yeah, interesting. Do you guys offer any kind of coaching?
We do. We have a Mighty Network called the Carnivore Revolution Mighty Network, and we do group coaching in there. And I also do individual coaching. And for that, somebody would just have to contact me and we could set up a time.
That's awesome. This has been such a great conversation. We're going to make sure we tag that Mighty Network in the notes for sure. Can you let
Great.
everybody know where people can go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Sure. I'm Serena.carnivore on most platforms. On Instagram, TikTok is just kind of a copy of my Instagram stuff, and then the Carnivore Revolution on YouTube. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Serena Musick, thank you so very much for everything that you have gone through. I can't believe for me, it was hard to find somebody who has done the cabbage soup diet. I've been searching, finally found my person. There you go. You've done it. That's amazing. Should have tried 2.0, but that's okay. It's crazy what you've gone through in your health journey, and to be able to almost accidentally find carnivore and then be willing to share the message, I just think is so wonderful. So thank you so very much for hosting me on your show, and thank you for taking the time to come onto our show today. We really appreciate you.
Anytime. It's so much fun.
So much fun. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.